who are yet to join that, we just started the class, so they can still join. We haven't gone too far. Okay. Thank you very much. So we are on unit 4 of our course outline, and then today we'll be discussing the government's role in meeting housing needs. Okay, we will bring it to our country, like Ghana here. So we'll discuss some roles that the government has played, some policies, some laws that were made to regulate housing needs in the country. During our discussions from last week, last 2 weeks, and then the first week, we discovered that housing is one of the basic human needs everyone should have. Everyone needs shelter to protect us from elements like sunshine, rainfall, external wind, and also to keep us safe and other things too. In many countries, especially like developing ones, to find affordable housing becomes a challenge, especially for low-income families. So because of this, people often look to the government to help them to provide houses, okay, or to even make housing easier for them to get one. However, the extent and nature of this role of the government to provide houses for citizens has been debated. So we have two schools of thoughts who argued based on the government on housing needs. We have the first one, John Tenner, in 1976. He argued that there is a universal need to house oneself. Okay. He's trying to tell us that people have the universal need to house themselves. He said that when people are given the opportunity to build their own houses, so it gives them the freedom to manage the kind of houses that they want. It allows them to express their identity and their culture. We've already identified that the houses that we built are kind of the extensions of who we are. So when you're allowed to build your own house, you build it the way you want. You choose the type of doors you want to use, you choose the type of roofing, the number of rooms, everything. You design it based on how you want it. Okay, so he said it's a process which is a cultural expression of individual identity. In contrast to this idea that there's a universal need to house oneself, we have Bejes in 1978, who also criticized this approach. He believed that when we encourage people to house themselves, it could be a way that it could be a way that we are trying to let government avoid his responsibility. He believed that it is the government's duty to provide homes for those who cannot afford it. Because we pay taxes, so he feel the government can use some of the money to provide accommodation, to provide houses for those who are low income generators who cannot afford them. Okay, so when we leave housing in the hands of those who cannot afford them, they will tend to build houses or build structures which are unsafe. They might end up living in a housing environment that won't see to their needs, that won't help them to develop, that can increase the rate of social vices, and then they can be prone to diseases. So he argues that the state has a duty to provide housing, especially for the most vulnerable groups in the society. So with this school of thoughts in mind, whether we should build for ourselves or the government should build for us, the government has been unable to do such for us. And this is most often relevant or seen in developing countries due to lack of resources. Most developing countries like Ghana, we struggle financially to be able to provide such houses for low-income settlers. However, the government recognizes that they have some responsibility to provide for houses for low-income generators, the needy, the vulnerable ones. So let's look down from the colonial era to date. We'll talk about some housing policies or some regulations that were laid by the government to provide us with our housing needs. So in the 19th centuries, we used to be ruled by the British in the then Gold Coast. So the British built houses for themselves. So all the houses that they had were for their officials, okay, the missionaries that came to share the gospel with us, some Europeans that came to trading in Gold Coast, their family members that came with them. So they built castles and some colonial bungalows around the coastal areas. They built it to suit their needs. So when you go to such castles and then their bungalows, you see that when we were learning about urbanization, we said it is believed that people transfer their house, the type of houses that they were building in the rural houses to urban centers. Okay, so they were doing the same thing. The type of housing that they had from wherever they came from, they were building such houses here to suit their kind of living. They were not used to how we were living, so they built it to suit themselves so that they'll be comfortable to live in. At least it was their standard. But the Ghanaians, the ordinary Ghanaian, didn't have such privilege. We didn't have such houses. We were living in our traditional houses that we made of huts, that we made of mud. In those times, the courtyard houses were most relevant in our housing system. So in 1957, Ghana gained independence. So after the independence, we experienced increase in our population. And when a population increases, there is the need for housing. So everyone needs a place to lay their head. So the then government, which was Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, established the State Housing Corporation. The State Housing Corporation, which is now called the State Housing Company Limited. At first, we used to call it it was called the State Housing Corporation, which was established in 1956 to provide low-cost houses for civil servants and other low-income earners. The reason why they created this State Housing Corporation was to set up plan, okay. They will build and manage housing projects for population with the focus of the middle and the low income earners in the country. So once there was an increase in population, they felt that there was a need for the government to provide houses for citizens. So he established this State Housing Corporation to make sure that houses are provided for these people. We also have another one like the Tema Development Corporation. which was also to manage the land areas in Tema. So when the government, then government, Dr. Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah gained independence, he started building factories to provide employment for the citizens. And then most of those factories were in Tema. So he felt like if I have a factory, I should get places for people, my citizens, my workers to live. So he developed the Tema Development Corporation to manage the land area in Tema. So they were responsible for planning how the Tema area would look like. They will develop the area. They will build roads and other houses and other infrastructures to provide accommodation for those who are engaged in economic operations over there. So the corporation also built several housing estates in Accra. We have some in Kumasi and then some major cities in the country. We also have the accelerated housing scheme. Accelerated housing scheme, which also implemented in the 1960s. The accelerated housing scheme was to increase housing supply in the country. As such, they were tasked to offer financial incentives, such as subsidies to private developers, so that it will encourage them to build more affordable houses. And the affordable houses that they were supposed to build should be accessible to the low-income individuals. So we had a accelerated housing scheme. We also had the National Housing Authority, which was also tasked to build affordable housing units for the general population. So we can see several high-rise apartments in Accra and major cities. So when you go to most of the local areas, you see government-owned apartments, which were built with the intention of creating accommodation for the low-income generators in the country. The government also launched the People's Housing Program. The People Housing Programs. They were also to provide subsidies to individuals. So as the accelerated housing scheme was providing subsidies to private developers, the People Housing Program was also to provide subsidies for individuals or groups who wanted to build their own houses. So this program also encouraged the development of cooperating housing societies to increase the supply of houses in the country. We also have the affordable housing program, affordable housing programs. It was also aimed to provide affordable houses to middle class. All these housing schemes that were made were to provide houses for the middle class people, those who didn't earn much. Okay, so they were to give mortgage financings to individuals and families who wanted to build their own houses. And through the affordable housing program scheme, we had SNITs building low-cost houses, giving low-cost housing loans for members. They also build low-cost houses for members. So when you go to places like they have some in Takrade, they have some in Cape Coast. When you go to some areas in Accra too, they have SNITs, low-cost houses, which are also given to citizens to live in. We also have the Ghana Real Estate Developers Association, which is termed as the GREDA. So the GREDA was an association of real estate developers in Ghana. So they were supposed to support and also influence decision or policies or regulations that relates to housing delivery, which will suit low-income settlers in the country. So that was the main task of the grader. Okay, it was just an association of developers, and they were because it was an association, that voices will be heard much than the individual low-income generators. So they were supposed to make sure that whatever policies that were made in the country should suit the low-income generators in terms of housing. In 1990, the housing sector faced challenges due to population growth, urbanization, and increased demand for housing. So to address this issue, the government launched the National Housing Policy. The National Housing Policy, and this policy was also aimed to provide affordable housing to Ghanaians. So this policy established the Ministry of Works and Housing to oversee the implementation of the policies and initiatives that were to be set to in the delivery of affordable houses to citizens. The government also launched the Ghana Water and Sanitation Agency. When you build houses, when you make affordable houses to the individuals, you have to also provide water for them. Okay, so through this, he launched the Ghana Water and Sanitation Agency, where this institution will see to the make sure that people get clean water to drink, and also see to it that the living condition of residents or citizens in each community is up to the standards to be free from sickness. Okay, so they were to see that the sanitation in every housing community was adequate. We also have the National Mortgage Scheme and then the National Housing Funds. And then there's also the First Ghana Building Society. The First Ghana Building Society, which is now known as the First Ghana Savings and Loans Limited. So it was a savings and loans company that was set up to provide affordable loans to citizens. The loans that they were giving out, the interest rate on these loans were lower than that of what was given in most of the commercial banks. So this society gives loans out. So if you want to build a house, you just go to them, and then if you're a worker, you provide some details, and then they'll give you loans for you to build your house with a lower interest. So apart from these housing schemes and policies that were made, we most of them are seen in the urban areas, but we have also some in the rural areas which promoted the use of improved local materials. So we have resettlement houses, which were from the construction of the Volta Lake. The government took some land from those people, and then he had to take them to a different place because he wanted to use that place to build the Volta Lake, to build a bridge, and then to build the dam. So because he took their land, he had to resettle them, give them a different location to build a house. So that he could have just ignored them, but it was his duty to give them another place to stay. And then we can also talk of building of the Temahabo. Those over there, those citizens who were living at that land that the government took were relocated to a different place to settle over there. So all these housing schemes that were initiated, okay, they were implemented. Some of them were working, but now we realize that they are not working as much as we were expecting them to work. We don't really see them, how they reflect in our houses. And there are some factors which has made them not seen by us. And these factors are, the first one is lack of large tracts of land. Okay, there were problem of land ownership challenges. So providing housing in Ghana became difficult because the government couldn't get larger pieces of land for development. So if you wanted to build affordable houses for us, for the citizens, he had to go, there's supposed to be a land, and then those lands were difficult to get because these lands were in the hands of traditional authorities like the chiefs and the family heads. So they were known as the stool lands. When it comes to when we say it in Chief, we say that in Kunyasase. So these lands were in the hands of the chiefs in the society, the heads of families, like they belong to families. So because of this, the government did not have full control over the land. So it became hard for him to secure enough land to build such housing projects. Even if he can get the land, he has to negotiate with them. And then negotiation can be slow. When you have to negotiate with them, you have to speak with the chiefs, and then the chiefs will also take time to speak with its elders, and then they have to plan. It won't be just a decision taken by the chief. And then he has to also speak to head of families. And then families, it can be their extended family. Most of them, those people living in those times were extended family members. So this negotiation will take time, okay, and sometimes can lead to disputes. Some of the family members will agree that they will give the land out. Some of them will not also agree that they will give the land out, and then it will contend to issues. So there was difficulty in government had issues with getting lands to build houses for citizens, and also the cost of construction and repayments also became an issue. Cost of construction and then repayments. So we can talk of government had to build houses for affordable houses for citizens, but these houses that he was supposed to build, he will use money to build it. Okay, and then he needs a lot of money to build those houses. Most of the houses built, those affordable houses built, were not low rise houses. They were high rise houses. Most of them were flats. So building flat houses also needs a lot of reinforcement. It needs lots of money to do it. So if he's able to invest that huge amount of money into it, and then to make those houses affordable, the main goal was to make them affordable. So if he makes them affordable, you'll be charged a lower price than those that you go like the normal ones that you go and rent outside, which are not for the government. And then the monies that they were receiving as payments, okay, for the houses that they were from the citizens, as payments for the for rent, were not enough to see to the maintenance of the house. When we live in someone's house, we feel that things inside the house are our responsibility. If you get a crack inside or you have a problem inside the house, then it's yours. But if it's outside outside your room, then it's for the landlord or the landlady. So they were having a lot of issues. Maybe a pipe will break and those things, but the money that the government was getting wasn't enough to see to these leakages, to see to these maintenances. So it was like, because we are not getting enough money to see to these things, then it started going down. Okay, the people were not treating the houses well. When there are problems, they won't use their money to do it. They will be living in it like that, so they get their own money to go and build it. So it also became an issue, and then rates of population increase. After independence, everyone was happy, so they were just giving birth, the population increased, and then as much as people were being born, the government couldn't provide for all of them. So he provided for those. So he provided some, and then it wasn't enough for everyone. And there was yes. Hello.
Please, your mic. Hello, please, in ways of please, can you go over what he said, because we
Please,
couldn't
which
hear what he
parts?
said.
Hello, madam. Please, which parts? Hello. Hello.
About please, the rate of population.
Hello.
Hello, madam.
All right, I'll do that.
Hello, madam.
Yes, I'll do that. Can you hear me? Yes. Hello. Hello.
Please, where you said the increase of population after independence.
Okay, I'll do that. But can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Hello. Hello.
Hello, madam.
Yes, can you hear me now? Yes, can you hear me now? Hello.
Yes, madam.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, madam, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, as I said, okay, I'm going over. I'm going over. Okay, so I was talking about the rate of population increase. Okay, when the population increased, he had to provide for all of us, and then it was so much that he couldn't. The government then at that time couldn't provide for almost everyone. So they were still using the old ones that he has built, because there were other things that he had to use the money in the country to sort out for. So he couldn't provide houses to seize the number of people being born, or the increase in the population. And then we have high expectations in terms of housing. People had the expectation people had when they hear that the government is going to build affordable houses for us. Okay, when they hear that the government is going to build houses for us, they remove it's like they don't hear the affordable aspect of it. Government is going to build houses for us, and then we all know that the government has money. So when it's going to build houses for us, we expect that in this era we expect new and then classic things, materials to be used in building the houses. So they don't expect to see the old jalousie windows that we have in most government schools. Those windows, wooden windows type that they used to have. They don't expect to see those types. They expect to see at least tinted glass, or a slide or liver blades. So the expectation people had in terms of housing were not met in the affordable houses that the government made bills for citizens. So because they didn't like it, they were not patronizing it. They weren't going to live in it. And then the houses, they were just left abandoned. So it didn't encourage the government to be building again. And then we also have the government's inability to implement policies, especially in terms of sociocultural factors. So, for example, the government's provision of high-rise apartments, such as the SNIT flats, does not meet the sociocultural practices of citizens. He built flat houses for most of the buildings that the affordable houses were flat houses, and these flat houses did not support some of our practices. In those times, most of our activities were outdoor activities. Most of us, most of the citizens were living in compound houses or courtyard houses. So they were used to coming outside to wash, coming outside to pound for food, coming outside to cook. So if you built a flat for me and then I live on the third floor, how do you expect me to come downstairs to come and wash? I have to carry all my things downstairs and come and wash. So if I come in and the tap is not flowing well downstairs, I have to move up and then come downstairs to go and fetch water and bring it downstairs. They weren't okay with it. And then that you can't pound fufu upstairs too when you're living on a story building. You can't pound fufu upstairs. So it didn't support some of our practices. Okay, if we have when you live on apartment house, flat houses too, you don't have your personal space. You share corridor and others with staircase, verandas with others. So people felt like it wasn't meeting what they wanted. So people were not patronizing it that much. We can also say that in such houses there are only 1 or 2 bedrooms at most, and then will not meet the extended family needs. Most of them were to live in those houses with their family members, which most of them were extended family members. So if you have just 1 or 2 rooms there, it will be difficult to have such a family living in those areas. And then people still build houses for themselves in shanty towns, as they did traditionally in the courtside. While government was putting in place measures and policies to make sure that there will be affordable houses for citizens, people were still building on their family lands in rural areas. So they felt like, oh, there's my grandmother's land, let me build something here. They were building anyhow that they wanted, rather than going to live in those that the government has built for us. So this led to the collapse or the breakdown of these policies. It's not to say that these policies are not still there. They are there, but they are not as effective as how we expected them to be. So if there are problems that arose that led to these schemes going with problems, we expect that the government tries to allow partnership with private developers to construct affordable housing. Right now, the government did so. Okay, he allowed with private developers to make sure that they construct affordable housing for individuals. We can talk of the accelerated housing scheme, the GREDA, the Ghana Real Estate Development Association. Government partnered with those people to make sure that they provide affordable housing schemes for houses for individuals, and then introduce several initiatives to support the development of low-cost housing by providing land space in urban areas to reduce the cost of building. Most of these low-cost houses were built in rural areas. And then at that time, if you were living in an urban area and then you are working over there, there's no need you going back to just because they have affordable housing in that particular area. Okay, so the government should provide land space in urban areas that can also they can also be set up build affordable houses to reduce the cost of building, because if there are no affordable houses in urban areas, the prices of houses become expensive. So the government can also do that to make sure that they have such houses in urban areas. And the government can also establish partnership with international organizations to make sure that we access fundings. Okay, the funding should be a long-term one. They can have go on an agreement to have a long-term funding plan for workers, and also technical expertise to support the mortgage market. So because the government had to there was the need for the government to make sure that citizens get houses to live in, there was a habitat fair which was held in Vancouver in Canada. Vancouver is in Canada. So the habitat the conference was dubbed the Habitat One. So it's a habitat fair just like every other fair, okay, but this habitat fair was organized to see to housing related issues, okay. So a habitat fair where you can have real estate developers, people who have more insight into housing and those things to come together and then share their ideas related to housing. So this habitat fair was done by the United Nations. Okay, it took place in Vancouver, as I said earlier, from 31st May to 11 June in 1976. It was a conference which hosted 136 nations, of which Ghana was part. So this fair was the first of its kind. Okay, it was an inaugural UN Global Summit, which was made to address human settlement issues such as the rate of urbanization and the effect of urbanization, the need for shelter, the need for sustainable human settlement. Okay, they were to make sure that these things are kind of looked to well, so that each government, the those present, okay, those present at the conference were heads of each state of the 136 states. So heads of each state. So when they'll tell you about some things, some actions, some recommendations that each government should take notice of. They should make so that it will help them to at least see to it that people are migrating, people are moving from urban areas to rural areas to urban areas, but it shouldn't affect the economy of the country. So at the conference, the 136 nations approved 64 recommendations for national action. And then out of these 64 recommendations, we're not going to talk about all the 64, but we talk about these 5 of them. Okay, so the first one was the need for each country to establish a comprehensive national settlement policy that was linked to the socio-economic development policy of the country. So each country should have a clear plan for how their towns, their cities, their rural areas, their urban areas will grow, okay, how they will develop it. So this plan that they are going to have to should be connected with job creation, health, transportation, and other national goals of such country. So for example, if a country is to plan to create jobs, they are going to build factories, okay. If they build factories, they should also plan to build houses nearby, not necessarily at that place, but they should plan to build houses which will be as a will be accessible or to the which will be accessible to marketplaces, hospitals, churches, so that the workers over there will at least be comfortable whilst working. They should were supposed to provide good roads for transport, and then everything that was every other goal that is linked to um, the economic development of the country. And then the second one is they were to increase public control of the land. Government should increase public control of land use. So government should play a strong role in deciding how the land, okay, is to be used. So he should make sure that whatever land that he plans to either build a community, build affordable houses, whatever land that he feels he wants to make a housing community out of, it should be used wisely. It should be used wisely in such that it will reduce the creation of slum areas and also the creation of unsafe or unhygienic areas that is usually created by urbanization. And also there should be increased support for construction centers. The building sectors, which comprise of construction companies, masons, carpenters, engineers, all those people should be supported with tools, okay, training and material so that they can build more homes and infrastructures. So the government can give free trainings on how to build with local materials or training on how to use some tools, some equipment, or some emerging technologies in buildings. It was a way that the government can make sure that he supports the construction center by giving them trainings which will help them to build more houses for the country. And then the government should prioritize the provisions of safe drinking water and hygienic disposal of household and human waste for the whole population. So the government should make sure that everyone, especially the poor housing communities, have access to safe drinking water. They have toilets and then waste disposal at their end, so that they don't just litter around. They don't just dispose of their waste anyhow. So he can at least build modern washroom blocks for such communities, or also install affordable home toilets, and then also provide clean water taps for people living in such areas. And then government was also to provide new institutions as national, ministerial, and other appropriate level of government. And it was to formulate and implement policies with public participation as an indispensable element. So government should set up departments or offices that will manage housing and city planning. And then they should also listen to the people when making decisions. They should make sure that every decision they are taking relating to housing should include the citizens at that time, include citizens living in that particular area. So before building new houses or relocating people, of the officials should meet with the local community to hear their needs and ideas. In such ways, people may suggest a better location where they can have their resettlement houses. They can suggest how they want their houses to be planned to meet their needs. Okay, so it was recommended that the government should set institutions that will implement public policies with the public being part of it. So they emphasize the following areas where the government could have real effects. We have the first one, provision of adequately serviced supply of land that is suitably located for low-income housing. So the government should provide land, okay, and the land should be suitable for low-income housing. This means that the land that the government should provide should be in good condition. It should be in a good location, okay. It shouldn't be too far from Jos and then from where their services are needed. The land that the government is going to give people, or the land that the type of land that the government is going to build affordable houses for people, should be free from problems like that place being waterlogged, the it should be a land which you'll be able to construct good roads. It should be a land which will the roads being made can be able to connect to where they work. So whatever land that the government is going to give out should be suitable for low-income generators. It should be suitable for the citizens going to live there. That land should not be prone to danger. And then they also emphasize that the government can revise the building standards to encourage better quality construction. So many countries had building codes that were expensive or too strict for people to follow. So it was advised that governments can adjust these rules so that the houses can be built more simply, and then it can be also built cheaply, but still be safe and then also strong. And then governments was the support of local building industries. Governments was supposed to is supposed to support local building industries in the country and also develop more permanent indigenous materials. So instead of depending on expensive imported materials like steel or cement, governments were encouraged to support local industries that make building materials with clay, bricks, bamboo, or wood. So when we produce our construction materials in our country, these materials become cheaper and then they become suitable for us to be used in building than importing them. In a way, if the government supports these building local industries, it serves as a way to create jobs, and then it also supports the local economy. And then we also have collection and dissemination of relevant data. So for every government to plan properly, the government need accurate and updated information about the housing, the population, how the land was used, the growth of such housing environments. So the government needs information on this so that he can spend money efficiently, so that he will not fail to meet the real needs of the people. So if you have information on how the land is to be used, the population of those people, you will allocate money that are the exact or that meets the exact needs of those people. And then provision of training schemes at all levels of the processing of the housing processes. So he should give trainings to planners and architects on how they should go by it, if they need some technical advices from experts, if they need training on how to know how to use some tools in building houses. The government was supposed to provide such training scheme for those people. And then we can talk of how Ghana adopted these conference proceedings. So there have been different programs in Ghana, like those that have discussed like the National Housing Authority, People Housing Programs, the First Ghana Building Society, the TDC, the STC. There have been different programs like that. Okay, so all these programs were geared towards building affordable houses or giving up loans to people or making sure that people are financed to be able to get houses to live in. We also have the creation of land commissions and the town country planning departments that will help in regulating land use and then ensure that um, each community or each housing environment is planned well to ensure growth in such places. And also government gave technical institutions support to train artisans and craftsmen to meet what the industry needs, what industry expects from new graduates. We can also talk of uh, programs like community water and sanitation programs to make sure that people get clean water to drink in their communities. So these are some of the um, actions or that the country made in relation to the proceedings made from the UN conference. So in 1987, the UN explained what a real home was. They explained a real home as shelter providing protection from the weather elements with water and other services, security of tenant and also safety. So they explain this because we are the proceedings that they gave to the nations, most of the nations were able to at least adhere to it. So in that way, they were able to remove people from the streets. They were able to make those who were homeless by disaster or those who don't have home. They made sure that they weren't sleeping on the streets. So that situation was highlighted in UN when the UN declared the International Shelter for the Homeless. As such, they mentioned some of the policies or the things that some of the nations of which Ghana was part made to make sure that what they told them about what they told them to do at the Habitat Fair was done. Then we move to laws that regulate our housing plans and then housing deliveries. We have laws that regulate our housing plans and housing deliveries. So for every community to be set up, there are laws that will regulate the housing plans and how houses will be designed. Okay. So every house is supposed to be built based on a defined rules and guidelines. And then in Ghana, we have Act 925, which talks about the Land Use and Spatial Planning Acts. You have zoning and land use regulation, you have national building regulations, you have local government acts too. These are regulations that see to it that houses that are being built or housing environments are made to follow some particular set of rules. So these are some of the laws that establish the framework for land use. They make sure that every environment will be safe and then environmentally friendly for people to live in. These rules are available at the town and country planning departments of the municipal or the district assemblies. So these rules and regulations are laid down to control population in they are to control population, okay? They are to make sure that there's good sanitation, there's no health issues, people living there are comfortable, and then they'll talk about the aesthetics of the beauty of the community and also safety of the community. So these rules that we are coming to talk about are the zoning regulations, the building regulations, the aesthetic regulations, housing codes, and then taxes. The first one is zoning regulations. Zoning regulation. When we say to zone, we mean to divide, okay, to divide something into parts. Okay. So these regulations indicate how the land is supposed to be used. There are laws that divide land into zones and dictate how it can be used and then developed. The purpose of this is to regulate the use of land. As such, houses are supposed to meet certain standards for specific purposes that are to prevent overcrowding, enforce particular structural design that will control sanitation, and also enhance the safety of people living there. So based on these zoning regulations, we can have strictly residential areas. So when you talk of residential areas, this area is designed for just residential development. So these places are designed for individuals and families to live there. So you find all types of houses over there, like the detached houses, semi-detached flats. Those zones are for human living. Okay, because humans are living there, you find churches, markets, banks, hospitals to suit their needs. So we have strictly residential zones, and then you can also have strictly commercial zones. These areas are mainly planned for business activities. So people don't usually live there. It's not a place where people usually live, but they come to buy, sell, or work there. So we have offices over there, we have bars, we have hotels, we have eateries, we have malls and others offices present in such zones. Those areas are strictly for commercial purposes, income generating purposes. And then we have industrial zones. These zones are also set aside for heavy or light industries that deals in manufacturing, processing, warehouse, and distribution. So when you go to these places, we have buildings like factories, we have processing plants, we have storage yards. Such places are also noisy due to the production processes that go on at those places. They are not good for human. Such places are not good for human to live there because of the kind of production processes that goes on. They release some harmful gases into the atmosphere that are not good for human consumption. So those industrial zones are away from residential areas. They are built away from residential areas so that they don't have people living close or near to it. When you go to Tema, there are some places where they term as industrial zones. When you go to North Kaneshi too, they have such places over there too. And we have special purpose zone. They are used for public services like building airports, building schools, building hospitals, building power plants, military training centers. Okay, they are special purpose zone. Those areas are designed by the are set aside by the government to make sure that at least if there are projects to be undertaken, we will use such lands for future projects. So they are special purpose zones. So we have the Kotoka International Airport as an example of the special purpose zone. We have recreational zones too. There are places that are designed for fun, for play, and then for relaxation. So we can talk of parks, stadiums, conservation areas, okay, where people can exercise, people can rest, people can enjoy nature. When there are sometimes fair or some holidays programs, they usually have it at those recreational zones. And then we have agricultural zones. These are areas that are kept for farming activities, just for farming activities. There are zones that are purposely selected or purposely developed for farming activities. And then we have the mixed use zones. And talk of mixed use zone, there are areas which allows a mix of houses. Okay, so residential areas, they have commercial areas in it, and sometimes they have industries over there, but these industries are not the large ones, the big ones that create at least there are some lights, like some small industries that deals with small production. Okay, so these are termed as the mixed use zones. Zoning limits the type of building which may be erected on a plot or land. As I was talking about the zonings area, it will tell you that this kind of factory is not supposed to be built at residential areas. That's why sometimes when they are building filling station closer to where human lives, at least those who live over there have the right to go and report them to the authorities that this kind of the kind of build office or company or the filling station will have an effect on them. So they release the type of buildings that may be erected on a plot. And also the zoning will also limit the type of houses. Okay, so the height of the house that's supposed to be built, okay, at a particular area. When you talk of houses at the airport areas, because the airplane will be flying, will be landing and then moving from that place more often, they expect that all houses over there should not be that high, okay, should not be that tall to at least have prevent accidents. They also set the minimum size of so the minimum size of a plot may be specified, and the placement of the house on the site may be restricted as to distance from property lines. Sometimes height of buildings may also be limited. It may also prohibit businesses and industries in residential areas. So the purpose of zoning is to designate permitted uses for land parcels and also to regulate the type of building and then development allowed in a particular zone. The aim of zoning is to separate land use, protect resources, and then the safety of the public, and also facilitate orderly growth and development as a way to safeguard property and then investments. So we have the hierarchy of zones. We have residential zones, you have commercial zones, industrial zones, special purpose zone, recreational zones, agriculture, and then mixed use zones. And the next one is aesthetic regulations. Aesthetic regulations. So when you talk of the beauty of the town, the beauty of the housing environment, then we are talking about aesthetic regulation. So there are regulations that control how building and outdoor space should look like in the community. It governs the preservation of beauty of cities, towns, and in the general environment. The goal is to make such housing environment attractive. It is to bring the beauty that will enhance living over there. So they control the building appearances. You can talk of the style, the shape, the style, even some materials that you use to build land houses over there. They can even control the kind of color that you have to use in such environments. They control some features in streets like light, street lights, the arrangements of street lights in the housing environments, how trees are planted, okay, some places where they can put benches, how you make your fences, the design of your fences, the placement of billboards on streets. They regulate all those things. And then they'll also control reservation of areas for gardens. Okay, they reserve places for gardens to grow flowers, all kind of flowers of various colors, to make sure that such an environment is beautiful. So they also encourage planting ornamental plants both in and around your houses. And then preservation of some natural elements such as rivers, spring, waterfalls, mountain forests, for beautification purposes. So it will be so nice when you go to a community and then you see that there's a river or there's a stream flowing in the middle of the housing environment, and then it doesn't affect any housing, or it doesn't affect the housing delivery. It doesn't affect anything in the in such community. It's just a serene environment where you can just go and sit. It can be in the middle of the town. You can just go and sit there and then relax yourself, or sit there and then just be thinking about yourself. Okay, so these aesthetic regulations kind of regulate this. So the aesthetic regulations may not permit some houses to be built in some communities. When you go to Accra, most of the gated communities restrict some kind of houses that you're supposed to be built over there. It's not every type of, if you want to build if you want to build in such gated community, it's not every type of house that you can build. They will not allow you to build a courtyard house there. I've seen courtyard houses which are modern. Okay, it's not as old as we used to know. So if you build a courtyard house, it's at least it should be modern. Okay, it should have some changes in it which will make it nice. You just want to improve how beautiful the community is. Okay, so housing structure in such environments are arranged in certain order, and then environmental elements such as rivers, spring, waterfall, mountains are reserved to improve for beautification. We also have housing codes. Housing codes go hand in hand with the building regulations and then restrictions. So Housing codes and the building regulations are a set of regulations that establish the type and the quality of materials to be used and the form of construction that is permitted to take place. So let me first talk about the housing codes. The housing codes are official rules and regulations that set out the minimum standard that every building must be designed, constructed, maintained, and be used to ensure safety and health of the people living over there. So the housing codes regulate as they regulate the minimum room size that every house is supposed to have, ventilation and then lighting system. Every house should have at least a housing code can tell you that at least you should have 1 or 2 windows in every single room so that you can have proper ventilation. It will tell you where you should place your windows. Okay, the height it should be from the ground. It can also set out plumbing and then electrical system, safe and functional health heating system. We have it also sets out regulations about the type and quality of materials that are supposed to be used for construction, and even the form of particular type of construction that will be permitted. It also talks about the how you should build a house to meet emergencies. So in case there is a fire outbreak, okay, how you should arrange your stairs, so the number of stairs you are supposed to have, where they should be placed. These are what the housing code sees to. So when you have housing codes, they'll tell you the appropriate drainage system that every house is supposed to have. They can tell you that each house should, every housing unit should at least have a toilet facility in the house so that people don't go outside the community to just be defecating anyhow. Housing codes will also tell you that for every community, you should have a shopping center, you should have a market, you should have a clinic, you have a health center, hospital, school. So if it's the chief or the heads of family giving land out just like that, the housing codes can restrict that for these areas you should have this kind of amenities that will help people to live there, well, people to be comfortable living over there. So in recent years, the housing code has been violated. This is due to the high demand for housing units in and around towns and units. The situation has led to uncontrolled and random building of houses in any available space using any materials. The state of affairs has resulted in overcrowding in communities and the fast development of slum areas in towns and cities in Ghana. So we have all these housing codes which spells out rules of what we should have when you're going to rent a house. The house should have at least a fire safety equipment. Okay, the house should have at least this, but we don't go by it. We don't go by them. People build anywhere that they want. It's just a matter of getting the land and then you build over there. So building houses don't usually follow these kind of codes, but in essence, there are codes, there are regulations that control at least how or the kind of things that we should use, or the standard of building materials and everything that we should use. That the same applies to the building regulations and the restrictions. There are also restrictions restrictions that deals with the type of materials that can be used in housing, construction, and the type of structural designs that are allowed by the town and city planning offices. So the building regulations in Ghana, we have the LI 1630. It regulates the height of buildings in specific areas, the height of your door, the height of every wall. It regulates how deep you should build your foundations. If you are going to build a house, how deep the foundation should go, depending on the topography of the land. If it's a hill, if it's a mountainous environment, if it's a lowland environment, the type, the depth your foundations should go. It regulates the number of blocks you can lay from foundation to the lengthening of your wall. It regulates the placement of sockets in the room. It regulates how wiring is supposed to be done. You know, sometimes when you're going to when you rent a house and then you feel like, oh, I'm sleeping here, so I feel I should have gotten a socket here. And then you go and call an electrician, and electricians come and fix it for you. Sometimes those people will tell you that I can't make it here because of this reason. Okay, so these building regulations, those people, those who are masons and electricians, those who build, those in the construction field, they know these rules, they know these regulations, and that is what guides them in building your house for you. Sometimes based on your specification, you tell them that, oh, this is what I want, but they will tell them it cannot be done this way because of this. So that is what the building regulations and the restrictions do. They can also regulate the thickness of your wall. Okay, it will regulate the if they are mixing cement with sand, the number of cements the number of bags of cement they can use to mix with the number of wheelbarrows of sand they can use. They have this regulation. It's like a law book, okay, that spells out how these things should be done properly. They are done to make sure that houses are built well to to withstand earthquakes or natural disasters. Okay, so these are the rules of the building regulations and the restrictions. And then we have taxes. Which when it comes to houses, in everything that we use our monies for, we pay taxes to it. But when it comes to housing, they are termed as the property tax. So they are the compulsory monies that are levied by the local government or municipal authorities on the value of land and building that we owe. So the monies taken from owners of various houses are what they use to maintain our various housing environments. That is what they use to make our streets for us. That is what they use to make sure that when street lights are faulty or spoils, they come and fix it for us. When the housing community is kind of experiencing robbery attacks and those things, they can use such monies to organize or mobilize watch dogs. When I say watch dogs, I don't mean dogs in say like people who can watch over us when we sleep. Okay, so it is the monies that they take from each houses, depending on the type of house that you have, then monies that they take, it's not the same for every house. If you live in a 4-bedroom house, the amount they'll take from you won't be the same as the money they'll take from someone living in a single room. And then also it varies from housing environments. So if you live in a rural area, the amount of money that they'll take from you will be different from the amount of money they will take from those living in housing urban areas. Taxes are usually paid annually, and then it is one of the main sources of revenue for local governments to fund maintenance of the housing community. It is important that people are educated to understand the importance of paying property tax so that the governments will be able to generate funds to provide what is needed in communities and to maintain them, to make living in communities meaningful. Most of the houses don't feel that what they are paying, okay, the amount of money they are paying as property tax are not being used for what they intend to use, so they are not paying. So just imagine if, like in a housing community where you have like 100 houses and then 80 houses decide that they will not be paying property tax, the money or the revenue they will generate from the remaining 20 houses cannot be able to fund what maintenance in the community. So it is advisable that if your relative or you, if you have a property, at least you pay taxes. If you have a business on a particular land, you pay taxes so that the monies that the local assemblies will come and take as property tax can be used to at least maintain the housing community or finance some of the things that you alone cannot do in the area. Okay, like where maybe you have a dusty road which needs to be made well. You don't have drainages in your community. They can use such monies to cater for those things than you alone going to look for contractors to come and build drainage, or like 3-4 houses contributing to build drainage for such housing community. So it's 38 minutes past 7, and this is the two topics that we intend to teach read on or discuss today. So if you have any questions relating to these two topics that we talked about, government roles in meeting housing needs and some of the laws that regulate housing delivery in our houses, you can just raise your hand and then we make more clarifications based on them. Madam Francisca.
Please, madam. So, what is the difference between the housing code and that of the building regulations and restrictions? Because it seems the definitions and the explanations are almost similar.
Yes, so as I said earlier, I said they go hand in hand. Okay, the housing regulations and then housing codes and the building regulations goes hand in hand. Okay, so the main difference is that the housing codes kind of set out the minimum standards that every building must be designed. And then the building regulations regulates the things, okay, you will use in building your house. So if this is setting standards, like for every that there can be a standard, like if you have a single room of this this size, okay, it should house just one person. Okay, that is what the standard says. This single room should house just one person. But the building codes will tell the building regulations will tell you that, oh, in this house that you are going to build, at least if it's a single room that you are going to build, please lay like 10 blocks of 10 blocks to make this kind of wall. Make sure that when you're locating a door, it should be placed at this direction. The definition, the explanation are kind of interrelated. So sometimes what the housing code will explain to you, it is also explained in the building regulations. When you get a handbook for Ghana, it is something that is really, it is meshed together. Okay, housing codes and building regulations. So are you okay with
Okay,
it?
madam. Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Hello, Madam Gifty. Madam Gifty. Okay, she's not here. Please, do you have any question again? Any contribution? Madam Evelyn, do you have any contribution?
Madam, please, no.
What of a question?
Madam, please, no.
Okay. So you have 2 more units to work on, and then that one will be left for next week. So next week we read on. I sent 1 unit to your course reps to deliver it to. I realized that when I was sending those ones, I left that one. Okay. So that I think that one is forms of housing delivery. So I've sent it to your various course reps to send it to you. So you can read on them for next week's class. And then we have just the various forms of housing deliveries, and then is it the last one is finishing a house. So next week Thursday we'll end it, and then I'll send by Saturday I'll send past questions to the course rep so that she can send them to you. If there are no questions again to continue the class, no suggestions, no adapts, then we end the class now. So thank you all for having to spend this time with me, and then we'll meet another time on Sunday, God willing. So for now, good night to everyone. Let's call it another day.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
night.
you. Okay. When I woke up.